Do you want to get better at selling in just 2 seconds? Well, it's easy peasy. All you got to do is ask your potential buyers, what's stopping you solving this problem for yourself? And you're going to eliminate objections and you're going to set yourself up for a far easier close with just this one very simple question. But hold on, of course, there's a little bit more to it than that. Asking this simple question is only half the battle. To get the right effect, you need to know how to get to the point and the position in the sales process to ask it. That's where the real magic happens, and that's what we're going to cover in this very video. Hi, my name is Will and I make selling simple. Now, this video looks at one of the most magical of all sales questions, something that I want you to start asking from today, forever, moving forward, and that is, what's stopping you from solving this problem yourself? But to get the most from this question, you first need to properly qualify the prospect. You've got to make sure that you know the 3 core things about them and their needs before you can then pop this question. And don't worry, I'm going to cover the 3 responses that you're going to get when you ask this question. And then finally, you need to leverage the answer. How do you incorporate what they're going to tell you into the rest of your sales process? And what can you do to make sure that this question leads to more deals getting done? And finally, what does all this have to do with Gandalf and Frodo? We're going to cover all of that in this video. Now, one of the reasons that buyers give you objections is that they feel like they can solve the problem that you solve with your product or your service themselves. They believe that they don't need your help, so why the hell would they give you their money, their cash, if they can solve the issue themselves? But the truth of the matter is, if they could solve their problems on their own without you, then wouldn't they have done it already? And if they haven't done it already, then of course something's missing. Something is holding them back from solving their own pain points. And this, my friends, is what we call in the sales business leverage. So if you can get your prospects to realize that they can't do all of this on their own, then you're in a fantastic sales position. And you're also going to eliminate a whole ton of other sales objections that would have come later on down the sales process. But before you can drop this bombshell of a question of what's stopping you solving this problem yourself, you've got to start off in a certain location. You've got to start off by properly qualifying your prospect up front. And lead qualification is one of the greatest challenges for sales reps. According to HubSpot, they found that 34% of reps, over 1/3 of sales reps, say that lead qualification is the biggest obstacle to hitting their quotas. And of course, with the right leads, closing is easier, the whole sales process is easier, prospects are more enthusiastic, and the chances of a deal just getting stuck in your pipeline are far, far slimmer. Now, there are tons, literally tons, and it does my head in the way that the sales training industry does this, but there's tons of acronyms for qualifying frameworks out there. Each one gets more complicated and more confusing than the last. But when you drill things down to the basics, which is what we do over here at salesman.org, when you drill things down to the essentials, all you've got to do is cover these steps within the diagnosis framework from inside Selling Made Simple Academy. This 8-step model includes everything that you need to ask on a discovery call, including the questions you need to evaluate the buyer's pain. So whether your prospect actually has a problem and whether they're going to be motivated to fix it. Then we're going to look at time. So the buyer's timeline for solving the problem. Because if they're going to solve it 3 years from now, but you're only going to be in your sales role for the next 18 months, then they're not going to be a good fit for you. Then move directly onto fit. Is your solution a fit for the buyer's problem? Here we're going to look internally of genuinely, can we solve this for the prospect? Then we're going to look at return. So whether the product price and the work that the prospect has to put into implementation, so the cost of the overall package, is worth the benefit. Are we going to get an ROI for the buyer, a clear ROI from the buyer with this step? Next, process. Do we know the buying process within the account and does it fit with our selling process? Budget, of course. Does the prospect have the funds to buy our product? Champion, is there someone in the account who's going to influence the deal, whether it goes to you, someone else, or goes to a no deal and just gets stuck in your pipeline? And finally, the agreement. If we do X, will the buyer do Y? So if we get the contracts over today, will the buyer take a look at them and get them signed before the end of the week? We must get an agreement out of the buyer during our diagnosis framework. Otherwise, we've just asked a bunch of questions and nothing has resulted from it. So the information you learn from going through this 8-step process ensures that you're only going to be working with qualified prospects that are actually itching to buy from you. Once you've done that, then it's time to move on to step 2, which is popping the question. Now, the most common objection that most reps face is that buyers think that they can solve their own business issues themselves. And this is especially common if you're dealing with an executive, someone with power, or if you're selling to small to medium-sized organizations where perhaps you're dealing with the managing director of the company or the CEO. Because these individuals are directly tied to revenue, profitability, and they feel like they can probably save some money, some effort, some pain by just doing it all themselves. So once we've qualified the prospect, the best way to get around this objection is just to ask them face to face. So you know the issue, you know where you want to go with the business. What's stopping you from solving all of this yourself? And very likely the prospect will look at you blankly in the face and they'll say one of three things that's typically holding them back: time, expertise, or motivation. And usually it comes down to one or more of these three things, and that's it. Dead simple. If the buyer comes back with time, expertise, and motivation, you should be excited. This buyer is massively qualified to work with you. And what's important here isn't necessarily that you know which of these things is stopping the prospect moving forward themselves, as we're going to see in the next step. That knowledge is incredibly useful for getting the deal closed. Instead, the magic here is that the buyer admits that they need help. They're admitting to you, to your face, with this one simple question that's, maybe you could help me out here. Because you forced them to stop. They've thought about it and they've said out loud that they just can't do this on their own. And this shift in the prospect's mindset is really powerful. It turns you from this sleazy, greedy salesperson who's just trying to get money from them to someone who's offering real, true, tangible value here. You instantly change in the prospect's mind, rightly or wrongly, but from a predator, someone who's trying to take their money, to an asset, someone who can solve their problem. And that, Sales Nation, is huge. That is massive. So we've asked the question. The prospect is now mentally, psychologically, and verbally agreed that they need our help because of time, expertise, or motivational issues that stop them solving this problem themselves. Now what? Well, now you've got everything that you need to close the deal by leveraging the buyer's answer. So depending on what the prospect said was holding them back, whether it was time, expertise, or motivation, you've now got the structure for the rest of your sales process, closing strategy, and everything else that you need to do to get the deal done. All you've got to do is continually circle back to this pain point as you nurture and get the deal done. The buyer says, well, they don't have time to get this done themselves. You say, no problem. All the time-intensive work is done for you. I will take that burden off your shoulders. If the buyer says they've not got the expertise to get this done, well, we over at salesman.org have been doing this for nearly a decade. Maybe they say motivation is what's holding them back from solving this issue. Where you go, hey, you don't need motivation. We're motivated. We're willing. We want to get this done and this problem solved for you. See how this works? It's dead simple. And the best way that you can incorporate this information into your closing strategy is by using the Selling Made Simple Academy's storytelling framework. So let's take a quick look at how this storytelling framework works. Now, we're leaning into storytelling because people are motivated by stories. People are entranced by them. And when you weave some skillful storytelling into your closing process, it unites both the logical side of the brain and the emotional side of the prospect's brain together. So let's take a quick look at the framework. So first off, we're going to look at the buyer's current reality. And to do this, we're going to point to a previous client that we've helped who is in a similar situation. Someone who is suffering from the same pain points as your current buyer is going through. Their growth is stalling, they've got an inefficient team, whatever it is. What matters here is that the pain points really resonate with the current prospect that you're dealing with. It's what they're experiencing as well. Next, we're going to really dig into the unresolved pain. This is when you start to really twist the knife. Your goal here is to make the current prospect really feel what your past client was going through. As a result, they're going to feel like they've got to take the same action as your previous client as well. You can do this by adding some detail. What were the consequences of this pain in your previous customer? Who does the customer look stupid in front of because they're not solving this? Who's judging them and what's on the line here? Next up, we're going to hit the success blockers. So what held up your customer from solving their own problem? And here is where you incorporate your buyer's response to your magic question. Was it time? Was it expertise? Was it motivation? What were the blockers that were stopping them? Was it time? Was it expertise? Or was it motivation? It might be multiple of them. Let's say here in this case, it was motivation to get this problem solved. And this is where we're really going to start to connect these dots up and drive these similarities home. And once you do that, you can move on to the next step, which is describing the future reality. How was your customer's life different after they overcame this success blocker? Was it better? Did they overperform? What did they achieve or even outperform within their professional goals? Did their stress levels drop? Did the higher ups from the organization recognize all the hard work that this hero went through to achieve these results? The rosier you can paint this future reality, whilst it being real and based on an actual customer, right? The more enthusiasm you're going to drive for your current prospect. And finally, you're then going to make the most important connection of all. You're going to bridge from one side to the other in what we call the reality bridge. Now it's time to tie everything together. It's time to explain that, well, you're the guide, you're the mentor, you're the person who can take the hero of the story, which is your prospect, from the current reality of pain over to the bigger, brighter future reality. It's you that's going to help them get over this blocker, whether this is a blocker of motivation, a blocker of expertise, or a blocker of time. You're going to help them get from one side of this to the other. And that's the value that you offer and the value that your product and service offers to your prospect as well. You're going to be the Gandalf guiding the Frodo, who is the real hero in the story. And to take part in this journey, all the prospect has to do is say yes and sign and pay a contract. So there you have it. It's one magical question to eliminate the most common sales objection. And all you've got to do to put this into practice is properly qualify the prospect. Then you can pop the question, which is, hey, what's stopping you from solving this problem yourself? And then you can leverage their answer. And it's especially effective if you use this storytelling framework with your prospects to get the deal done. And that means smoother selling, higher close rates, and beefier commissions in your pockets. And if you enjoyed this video, why not click the video that's on the screen right now and continue making selling simple.